Welcome to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. I'm Simon Fowler, CEO of Empowering People Group, and I'm delighted to be hosting the first session in our series of people priorities in 2025. Before we get started, here's just a quick overview of who we are and why we're here today. So EPG consists of 4 innovative tech-led companies that are on a mission to simplify employee experiences and empower people to drive success. And today we're starting a new series designed to help simplify the complexities that the year ahead is absolutely set to bring. At the end of this series, we aim to give you a practical, actionable insights to tackle these priorities and really thrive in 2025. And today's session is focused on managing the huge topic of navigating the legal and business change we're set to face in the year ahead. Before we delve into that, there's just a bit of housekeeping to go through to help you get the best out of the session. For those of you who've joined us before, this will be a bit of a repeat, but please bear with me. The screen you see in front of you is customizable, so you can drag and move the speaker and slide views to position them however you prefer. You'll find speaker bios listed in the panel next to these, where you can read a little more about today's panel speakers. And we've also attached some resources on the topics being discussed, which you can download during the session and which we'll send these afterwards, and a recording of the session. Lastly, there is a contact us button below, so you can get in touch with us at any time during the session. And if you'd like to ask a question, simply pop it in the Q&A comment box at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the session, but as always, if we don't get to them all, we'll follow up with answers after the webinar. So let me introduce you to the rest of today's panel. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back Harborne's Head of Legal, Stefan Mars, who has become somewhat of a stalwart feature on our webinar panels. As usual, Stefan brings his extensive employment law experience and his innate ability to simplify complex legal speak into really easy to understand business speak, which is one of the many attributes that define everyone at Harborne's, our employment law arm of the EPG group. Welcome back, Stefan.
Hello, everyone.
I'm also really happy to be able to introduce you to Claire Cowan, Commercial Director from Working Transitions, the career management coaching and outplacement specialist within EPG. Claire expertly balances commerciality with an enviable people centricity, which makes her the perfect panel manner to discuss how we managing change with compassion. Thanks for joining us, Claire.
Thanks, Simon, and it's good to be here today.
Great, thank you. Right, let's delve into today's topic. Well, 2025 is really shaping up to be a year of unprecedented change for businesses, from the Employee Rights Bill shaking up employment law to the impact of rising NI and wage costs on your bottom line. Navigating this landscape with agility will be absolutely crucial to success. It's inevitable that difficult decisions will need to be made in the year ahead. In fact, research we've completed at the end of last year found that 4 out of 5 organizations anticipate large-scale redundancies in the next 12 months. And I think we're already seeing some of those as we head into January. So today we're going to dive into the complexities of what these will mean for you, covering the latest on the Employment Rights Bill following the House of Commons committee review stage, and also looking at the new collective consultation duties that came into force on the 20th of January. We'll then explore alternative cost efficiency options organizations may not have considered to mitigate the impact of all of these changes, whilst also delving into how to manage potential redundancies with compliance and employee well-being in mind. So buckle up for some unmissable people priorities insight. So, Stefan, first up, can you remind us of some of the seismic changes to come into the Employee Rights Bill and give us an overview of any potential impact from the House of Commons committee review? What do we know and what might actually change?
Thanks, Simon. So the House of Commons Public Bill Committee has held numerous consultation sessions over the last month to review the detail of the bill, and it has proposed amendments to the House based on that feedback. The bill is now at the report stage, but we don't yet know when the report stage will be completed and the third reading will be scheduled. But we have had a chance to review the public recordings and the notes from the Public Bill Committee debates to help determine what amendments may be made. Amendments can be made to the bill at report stage, but right now we don't have clarity on which these will be, and therefore the following is just our opinion on what may be impacted. So I'm going to break down what we know at this stage and what this could mean for businesses. But before I delve into the committee amendments, I thought it would be useful to share a quick reminder of the provisions of the Employment Rights Bill which are likely to impact organisations most significantly. So firstly, we've got the day one right to unfair dismissal. This one has dominated conversations about the bill. It makes it harder to dismiss new employees without a fair reason during their probationary period. Currently, unfair dismissal rights only apply after a qualifying period of 2 years. Then we've got the day one right to statutory sick pay. This extends SSP entitlement from day one of employment, potentially increasing short-term absence costs and adding complexity to payroll administration. As we know, currently SSP eligibility starts after a 3-day waiting period. Then there are stronger harassment laws. We covered in a previous webinar the impact of the new duties to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, which came into force last October. The bill further enhances harassment laws, making businesses liable for harassment from third parties like clients or customers, requiring a broader duty of care. We've then got boosted trade union rights. So easier union recognition and access to workplaces could lead to increased union activity and influence. Currently, the process for union recognition can be long and complex. Then we've got collective redundancy triggers reduced. I'm going to go into some detail shortly on the changes in relation to collective redundancies, which came into force earlier this month. But the new bill sets to go even further, lowering thresholds for triggering collective redundancy consultations. Currently, the thresholds are looked at on a per-site basis. Then we've got a fire and rehire ban. This makes it harder to dismiss and rehire employees on different terms, limiting businesses' flexibility. We've then got exploitative zero-hours contracts. So businesses will need to periodically offer contracts with a minimum number of guaranteed hours, impacting scheduling flexibility. Currently, zero-hours contracts are common in a number of industries. Then we've got mandatory gender pay action plans. So businesses with a gender pay gap will be required to take specific steps to address it, potentially leading to increased focus on pay equity. Currently, reporting is mandatory, but action plans are not. Then we've got day one family rights. So new parents will be entitled to family leave and pay from day one, impacting staffing and scheduling for new hires. Currently, qualifying periods apply for family leave and pay. And then we've got the new Fair Work Agency. A dedicated enforcement body could lead to stricter monitoring and potentially more fines for non-compliance with employment law provisions. Currently, enforcement is spread across different bodies. So that's a whistle-stop tour, and although the majority of the employment rights bill's legislative changes won't kick in until 2026, preparation is key for employers to get ahead of the curve and stay there. As you mentioned, Simon, there is certainly a significant period of change ahead.
Yes, Stefan, that certainly is a lot, and it's going to add significant complexity, I think, for businesses and HR teams. So did the committee review recommend any significant changes to the bill?
I couldn't agree more that these changes will inevitably increase pressure on employers and HR teams, but they don't necessarily need to be viewed through a negative lens. They can present an opportunity for proactive and positive cultural shifts within organisations, which in turn can have long-term benefits for employers through retention, engagement, and improved employee experience. So the committee stage is a crucial phase of the legislative process where bills undergo detailed scrutiny by a select group of MPs. This stage allows for in-depth debate, evidence gathering, and the introduction of amendments, ensuring the bill is well drafted and effectively meets its intended objectives. For the Employment Rights Bill, the committee engaged with large employers such as Amazon and BAE, as well as large trade unions and organisations such as the TUC and CIPD to debate the impact. As the bill is now at the report stage, we don't yet have visibility on what may change, but from what we have seen so far, it doesn't look like there will be too many significant amendments, but there were a few key areas that were heavily debated. So firstly, there were requests for additional clauses to be inserted, such as a right to domestic abuse leave. This would mirror the provisions in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, although the Northern Irish ones haven't yet been brought into force and are still under consultation. Unsurprisingly, the day one right to unfair dismissal was hotly debated with varying viewpoints. There is a real concern that it may lead to a reduced appetite for recruitment and less risk in hiring, which could lead to higher unemployment, particularly for groups within society that are already marginalised and find it harder to get work. It was noted that there is a need to make sure the detail of the bill does not drive unintended consequences like these. Small businesses were particularly identified as being at risk from the day one right to unfair dismissal because many don't have robust processes in place for managing new hires because they may have relied on the protection of the 2-year qualifying period. This was challenged in the debate because it was argued that there is already a day one right to unfair dismissal in many instances, such as when dismissal can be attributed to discrimination. So it was suggested that the new law could actually improve protection for businesses by forcing better processes. It was also noted that managers are most likely going to bear the brunt of extra responsibilities during probationary periods and will have greater administrative burdens. It will increase the risk of employees raising more grievances, which take up manager time and would therefore have a detrimental impact on manager productivity. There was also a recommendation to consider a less drastic move from 2 years to day one, and 9 months was proposed as an alternative, but it was also noted that more consultation on the impact is needed. So we will watch with anticipation to see whether this leads to any amendment to the bill. And then another meaty topic highlighted was the need to consult further on the actual operation of the trade union legislation in the bill. It was cited that this part of the bill is an enormous expansion to the power of trade unions. That was one of the quotes from the committee. Another direct quote from the committee meeting reads, "The objectives of this bill are to improve industrial relations and reducing the number of days lost to strike action by allowing working people to organise effectively through trade unions and improving the legislative framework in which they operate." How can the government believe that the bill will reduce the days lost to strike action when Part 4 specifically takes measures to make strike action easier? For example, it makes it easier for unions to be recognised by removing the requirement for a union to demonstrate that the proposed bargaining unit is 10% of its membership on application to the Central Arbitration Committee and replaces it with references to the required percentage test, which will surely make strike action more likely. So clearly a hot debate on that particular topic. This statement makes the concerns quite clear that the trade union legislation updates will have a significant impact on public and private sector businesses. So it was argued that it go through a much more robust consultation, more obviously to come on this topic. Generally speaking, unless any amendments are supported by the government, they are unlikely to make it into the final version of the bill. So watch this space. As soon as we know more, we'll schedule in another session to update further.
Brilliant. So thanks for the review, Stefan. So although we might not know exactly what the fine print will look like in regards to any amendments, that shouldn't stop HR and business leaders from formulating an action plan for how best their organisation will implement and adapt to the new laws. I think this has been made more urgent in light of the additional complexity we're facing following the 2024 budget increases to NI and the minimum wage threshold, which will have a significant impact on employee costs for all businesses. These two factors create a dichotomy for business leaders, in my opinion, because on one hand, there is a need to invest in resource to prepare for the increasing complexity and extra work that the new legislation has to bring, while on the other hand, they must look at cost reductions in order to mitigate the impact of the increasing employment costs. I recently read a Deloitte article that states that 52% of finance leaders rate cost reduction as a top priority. So Claire, I'd like to bring you in at this stage to give us more insights on what organisations can do to navigate these quite seismic changes.
Thanks, Simon. This really is a perfect storm for organisations. However, I agree with Stefan that we need to look at this through a positive lens and focus on the opportunities also that it brings, particularly for transformation. Having said that, we must also recognise that it's easy for teams to feel overwhelmed with the challenge ahead. Yet inaction is not an option. So there are some proactive measures that we can take now. In situations like this, it can often lead to short-term fixes rather than long-term solutions. But focusing solely on cost reduction as a knee-jerk reaction will be detrimental. Instead, organisations need to adopt a holistic approach that prioritises both compliance and employee engagement and well-being. So here are 3 key considerations. Firstly, HR teams need to be freed up so that they can focus more strategically on the changes to come and what this means for their people strategies. In order to do this, we need to be empowering line managers so they feel more confident to self-serve people matters and to improve employee engagement and experiences. I know we've talked in previous webinar sessions about the accidental manager, who is one of many people leaders who are promoted due to their technical skills rather than their people management skills. By equipping line managers with the knowledge, skills and tools to be more accomplished people leaders, they will have a significant impact on the productivity and the success of their teams. Coaching line managers to be compassionate leaders will also have a huge impact on employee engagement and how managers lead their teams, handle employee relations issues and ensure compliance with employment law. Empowering managers can significantly reduce the burden on HR and minimise the costly risk of legal challenges. However, it's not just about training. It also requires investment in technology to ensure processes for managing people matters are more consistent and compliant, and so that empowering managers doesn't increase risk. Simon, I know that you're going to cover that in a little more detail later.
Yeah.
Secondly, upskilling the workforce is vital in a climate where workforce growth may be stalled and headcount may even need to be reduced. Upskilling your workforce in a tight labour market offers significant advantages. By investing in employee development, organisations can increase productivity, enhance employee retention and boost innovation. This not only improves competitiveness, but can also reduce reliance on external recruitment, which can then save time and resources. Lastly, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, leveraging technology to streamline processes, automate tasks and gain valuable insights into your workforce is vital. Investment in the right digital transformation strategies can improve efficiency and productivity, reduce risk, and support data-driven decision-making. The key here really is to look for solutions that reduce complexity and improve ways of working so that workers have more time to focus on the work that they do best.
Thanks, Claire. Some absolutely brilliant points there. So let me just delve a little more deeply into the point on digital transformation and self-service tools for manager. I believe passionately this gives organisations the biggest opportunity to reduce costs and improve productivity, which may reduce the need for the harder cost reduction measures like headcount reductions. I think by leveraging technology to enable data-driven decision-making, organisations can identify and address the root cause of the issues, including identifying areas where poor culture and performance or surfacing areas where well-being issues need to be proactively managed. Having a proactive approach combined with empowering managers to effectively handle employee relations matters within a controlled framework, I think significantly reduces the risk of costly employment tribunals, particularly in light of the impending day one right to unfair dismissal. There's no doubt that this day one right will increase the potential volume of employment tribunal cases. So it's crucial for businesses to review their employee relations processes and invest in really fit for purpose tools now, so that they are ready and new ways of working are embedded before the new law comes into force. Research that we've completed last year indicates that many organisations have yet to prioritise employee relations transformation, which I think leaves them really vulnerable to the increasing burden of unfair dismissal cases. In my opinion, this can no longer be delayed or ignored, so we can support you in delivering what we call Employee Relations 2.0, focusing on a best practice operating model that empowers managers and reduces the risk of increasing tribunals, rising sickness absence, and escalating admin burdens. When we look at our data, it consistently demonstrates that empowering managers to self-serve more employee relations matters significantly reduces the volume of cases escalating to tribunals. Now is the time to invest in these solutions before the productivity and cost burden of the inevitable increases hit. Stefan, what other priorities would you highlight for organisations to prepare?
Thanks, Simon. Obviously, significant policy updates are going to be required. So working with employment lawyers to assess the impact and work required now will ensure that businesses are ready for when the legislation comes into force, which is expected to be next year at the earliest. We can support businesses with this, so I'd encourage those attending to consider engaging with us sooner rather than later. Secondly, and we've covered this in a previous webinar session, the new day one right to unfair dismissal requires a significant overhaul of probationary period processes. This is going to have a significant impact on all aspects of line management from the point of view of a new hire joining the organisation. Line managers need to understand their accountability for effectively assessing new hires and ensuring they are set up for success when the right to unfair dismissal becomes a day one right. When hiring, managers need to clearly define the hard and soft skills required for the role so that they can evaluate applicants against specific criteria. It's also important for managers to discuss the values, behaviours and expectations that they seek during the interview process, ensuring there is alignment with the company's culture. Organisations could also consider introducing psychometric testing during the recruitment process to help to eliminate unconscious bias and improve the fit of a new hire with the requirements of the role and the values of the organisation. We obviously need to act now to prepare for the new laws, but from a business perspective, we should be focused on how we improve people experiences drive productivity, and ensure we keep good people regardless of the new laws. It can obviously be difficult to find good people and retain them, so improving their experiences in the earlier period of employment is vital, and probationary periods can be used positively to influence this. As mentioned, there is so much to cover on this point that we have a full session on it, and you can find the link in the resources box you can see on your screen.
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, prioritising probationary period improvements and getting ahead on preparing policies now is vital. And I think I'd also argue that like a lot of our customers who are well ahead of this process see it as a best practice anyway, irrespective of the legislation. So I think it will be an area of great improvement moving forward. So I'd like to move now on to the next big priority we're covering in this session, which is how we improve the management of large-scale change that includes redundancies. Although we've talked about how organisations can look at ways to avoid headcount cuts as the only option for cost reduction, there will inevitably be an increase in redundancies as organisations face the challenges that come in the year ahead. As I mentioned at the start of this session, we recently completed a piece of research which identified that 4 out of 5 organisations plan to make large-scale redundancies in the next 12 months. That's a staggering and really sobering figure. If anybody would like to read more about the findings, you can find the Shift Happens, and be careful how you say that, research in the resources section below. So let's now dive into some of the findings and why it's vital that we improve processes and prioritise compassion in redundancies. Stefan, I'd like to come to you first to cover the changes that came into force this month, which increased the responsibilities on employers. Can you give us a quick outline?
Yes, it's really timely as the new legislation came into force on the 20th of January, so it's very early days for organisations to understand what this will mean for them. The new legislation is an update to responsibilities under the snappily named Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, Amendment of Schedule A2 Order 2024.
It was on the tip of my tongue.
To summarise the changes, they introduced an increase in potential penalties for non-compliance. The key change is that if an employer fails to comply with their duty to collectively consult about a redundancy situation affecting 20 or more employees in a 90-day period, employment tribunals can now increase the compensation paid to each employee by up to 25%. This significantly increases the financial risk for businesses that do not follow the correct procedures. We've also covered already how the Employment Rights Bill is likely to prompt a greater requirement for collective consultation with the removal of the at-one establishment from the test, which is applied to determine whether collective consultation is required. So when this kicks in, it will be essential to ensure that you're tracking redundancy proposals across your entire organisation so that you know when the requirement to collectively consult is triggered. So, you may ask, how can businesses mitigate against this increased risk? Firstly, we suggest organisations must ensure they fully understand redundancy consultation processes, both individual and collective, to minimise the risk of non-compliance. Secondly, prioritising compassion in redundancy processes is key to improving outcomes for both the organisation and its people. And then lastly, if you haven't yet assessed what you need to do now, seeking legal and HR advice is crucial to ensure compliance and reduce the risk of increased penalties. A key part of ensuring compliance is to work with a legal partner who can support you with templated documents and best practice processes. As I've mentioned, the Empowering People Group can support with this, so please reach out if you need any support.
Thanks, Stefan. I think this is also a point that has gone a little bit under the radar with the sheer volume of legislation that we're facing at this moment. So I'd like to address the first point you mentioned, and then I'll ask Claire to come back in and talk about some of the practical actions on the compassion point. So as we all know, redundancies are complex and there is a heavy admin burden in managing consultation processes. We always advocate for using technology to simplify processes and enable people to be more human. So finding a technology partner who can reduce the admin burden but can deliver business-changing benefits to the redundancy process is key. Here at EPG, we have a unique solution called Meeting Manager that was designed because of exactly this, experiences and pain points we'd witnessed in 20 years of working with clients managing redundancy. This automates processes and provides access to step-by-step guides, scripts, and templated comms to ensure consistency and give confidence to those managing the process. So using a technology such as this frees up those involved in the process, enabling them to focus on engagement and being present in the moment for their employees, which will absolutely help improve the compassion in the process. For me, technology always plays a key role in demonstrating that processes were followed in a compliant way. that the progress is effectively monitored, and that any red flags are captured and effectively followed up. This can help protect organizations from the risk of increased awards due to poor processes, and also to help that human touch as we go through this unfortunate time. To find out more about Meeting Manager and our case management solution Empower, drop a quick note into the email box below and we'll get straight back to you. Right, so Claire, coming to the point on compassion in redundancy, why is this so important?
Compliance is critical in redundancy situations to limit legal risk. However, if the process excludes compassion, then that in itself can be a risk. As we've mentioned, if redundancy processes are not well managed and are deemed to be unjust, the risk of formal proceedings and now even higher awards increases. The impact of this can be far-reaching and long-term, affecting not just those impacted, but those managing the process and those remaining in the business. If done with empathy, the lasting impact can be significantly reduced. And although it's inevitable that there will be an emotional toll of job losses, a compassionate and fair process can make the experience more positive, because those impacted can focus on processing the situation properly if they're not consumed with emotions like anger and resentment from an unjust process. Compliance and compassion can and should go hand in hand. At the heart of this is a person, and the law on its own can be cold, but the way that processes are undertaken can be empathetic and people first. The impact on both the employee and the person delivering the process will be more positive if the process has the person at heart. Treating employees ethically is essential for reducing legal risk and protecting the well-being of those impacted.
Yeah, that's so important to remember, that these processes that we talk about are inevitably difficult, but actually poor experiences will increase feelings of resentment, which can have far-reaching impact on both the business and the workforce. Showing compassion means recognizing the human element and the emotional impact of the risk to jobs, especially during these challenging economic times. I think the first thing that leaders need to consider is how to deliver simple, direct, and really transparent communications. When breaking the news, communicating in a way that acknowledges and reflects the impact of the situation on individuals is absolutely vital.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And it really starts with careful planning and effective communication. By planning well, you put in place the right support, and that can minimise the emotional toll. This can include many things, including preparing managers and training those who will be managing the communications and consultancy process, having mental health first aid provisions in place, and offering outplacement and career transition support. It's really important to be clear about the process and the timescales involved to minimise uncertainty. Use empathetic and sincere language to convey how much you care about the impacted employees. Communicating with openness and transparency can help to alleviate the stress and anxiety associated with redundancies and create trust and understanding among all parties involved. I've been working with companies going through redundancies for many, many years, and I'd say that there's never has providing career transition and outplacement support for impacted employees been more critical than it is now. In this current climate, demonstrating your commitment to employee well-being, ensuring people feel supported and helped through the challenges and opportunities of change is essential. However, it's also important to consider the broader impact on the team and those remaining in the business. How you support employees during times of change and enable people to leave well has a significant impact on your wider teams. Survivor guilt can affect the productivity and morale of those remaining in the business too. So as Simon said before, it's key to communicate effectively with the wider team and provide training for managers to recognise and signpost support for those who may be experiencing low morale. Providing support for those impacted and those remaining in the business shows a commitment to a people-first approach to redundancy. Lastly, and by no means less important, is the need to prepare adequate support for those involved in managing the process. Many managers involved in conveying the redundancy messages to their teams will be facing this situation for the very first time, and they may lack confidence and experience. Providing training resources and clear processes is essential to deliver compliant and compassionate experiences. It's also important to consider the impact on their well-being and their productivity in this process, as it will take its toll. So providing support really is key.
Thanks, Claire. That's such a good point that could be neglected when planning redundancies. And I suppose it comes back to the accidental manager point that we were making earlier, is that those managing the processes may be significantly impacted too. Some great guidance points there. So thanks for simplifying how organizations can make a significant difference to the risk that comes with periods of change like this. So Stefan, is there anything you'd like to add to close off this topic?
Just really to reiterate that with the increase in compensation limits that came in this month and the further changes that are to come in with the new bill, now is the time to prepare and engage to ensure that you're not caught out. As organisations brace for the impact of the budget changes and legislation, making longer term strategic decisions about how you protect the business is paramount.
So thanks, Stefan and Claire, for your insightful inputs as always. And these are really heavyweight, meaty priorities, I think. That's everything we plan to cover today, which I think has been quite a lot. So let's take a quick look at a couple of the questions that have come in as we are talking. So if I look at the first one, what are some best practice tips for building a high-performing and engaged workforce against this backdrop of significant change and job cuts?
So I kick that one off.
Yes.
So I think personally, it obviously intensifies the focus even more on recruiting the right people. So obviously making sure that all of your recruitment processes are as good as you can possibly make them. Then the focus on the onboarding process as well, again, super crucial in terms of high performing, engaged workforce. So having a look at your job descriptions, do the job descriptions really match what the people are actually doing, making sure you've got really clear objectives set by managers in your probationary period, and then making really early decisions about whether new employees are right for the business. Obviously, is going to be even more crucial when that day one right to unfair dismissal kicks in. And then finally on this one, I think obviously driving performance throughout the employment journey, even more important. So training managers, making sure that they're having regular one-to-ones with their teams, identifying star performers within the business, setting out career pathways, and then on the flip side, making sure that managers are nipping performance issues in the bud, to hopefully tackle those early and get employees back on track.
No, great answer, Stefan. Claire, anything to add to that one?
I think there's a lot covered there. I think it is a difficult time, and I think there is a lot currently that is beyond an organisation's control. However, we've said throughout this how important communication is, and whether that's leaders right at the top of the organisation, and then throughout the organisation, that communication needs to be clear and authentic. And exactly as Stefan just said, I think it's about thinking, how those line managers play such an important role. And ensuring they can have effective conversations with their teams, so that they really can, really ensure that people can talk to them and they've got the skills to be able to have those effective conversations.
Yeah.
If change is happening.
Sorry, carry on, Claire. I didn't mean to cut across you.
No, not at all. I was just going to say, if where change is happening and roles are affected, I think we've already said, but not to underestimate the impact that this has both on the individuals and the wider team. And that the more you can do to provide reassurance, support and clarity is absolutely key, because that uncertainty will impact negatively on morale and engagement.
Yeah, 100%. I think just picking up on a point you made, I think for me, in my experience, not at EPG, but in prior lives, I think it's that authenticity of communication. I think everybody in the working environment knows where we are from an economic perspective. And so these processes, whilst absolutely unfortunate, are not unexpected in many ways. So I think being really clear about why you're doing it, what you're trying to achieve, and being really honest about it, I think really leaves people with a feeling that, yes, we've got to do it, I understand why we're doing it, and now we'll go through the process. And then going through that process, I think we're back again to your manager community being absolutely the people that are the stalwarts of your organization and whose job it is to continue to keep the culture and the focus of the organization going forward. So I think supporting them has never, obviously I think it's always been very important, but I don't think it's ever been more important than it is today. With what we've got to go through in the year ahead, personally. Okay, thank you for that. How can HR teams effectively communicate the implications of the new day one unfair dismissal rights to managers and employees?
Yeah, so from my point of view, banging on about the probationary period yet again. So I think personally, it's getting it across to employees, communicating to employees that, and making them super aware that the probationary period really is their opportunity to demonstrate to the businesses that they are right for the role. So making sure that everything during the onboarding process makes clear to the employees that this is their opportunity to demonstrate that they are right for the role, and that probationary period is even more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think for me, I actually see it as a bit of an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, for HR teams and organizations to really make sure that they're employing the right people from day one so they don't get caught out by this. And for me, that's actually just best practice, because we all know the massive impact the right person has on a new person has on a team versus what the wrong person has on a team. So for me, I think effectively communicating it, but actually using it as an opportunity to, if we're being really frank here, get people to do what they should have been doing in the first place. Claire, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that role of the line manager. And I think, they play a key part in ensuring that, in supporting HR and making sure that, they understand that the as you say, the impact of having that probationary period, but also the conversations around performance. And being able to feel confident to have those conversations. So I think the line manager, we talk about the accidental manager, we talk about, people being, promoted because they're good at the technical aspects of a role rather than, often huge levels of experience in the people leadership piece. So again, I think, when you're looking at line manager capability and thinking about the skills that they've got or the skill development and leadership development that they need, I think that is absolutely a critical area for unfair dismissal rights, but actually the whole host of, engagement, reasons and for, that can have positive impact on engagement and retention and really make teams more successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I remember back to the first time I was ever involved directly as a manager of colleagues in a redundancy process, as somebody that really cares about my people and the people that I work with, I actually felt quite ill. Looking and thinking about what I was going to have to do going forward. So I think you're right, is making sure our managers are absolutely supported through this process is so important for me, as I think I've said. I think the third question is almost related for me, that's come through. So with so much to deal with, what would you say is the number one priority we should be focused on right now? And I think for me, that is a continuation of my answer to the previous question, which is, we've talked about some of the legislation, and there is lots. We've been running these series of webinars for quite a while, and we've got a whole series to come. So the thing that we know is there will be masses of change coming this year and next year. So for me, the number one priority that any organization should be focused on is really training, supporting those managers and making sure that, that principle of the accidental manager, which we all know and maybe have been in the past ourselves, you reduce that as much as possible. Because for me, whatever changes come, it's your manager community which will really support the business in getting that through the business and making it go through as well as possible as it can do from a business perspective.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that that population are the key to success of any business change. Yes, you need the right communication from the senior leaderships, understanding direction so that people can understand where the business is going. But that line manager population are absolutely critical. their skills and ability to lead effectively, to manage the uncertainty, potential anxiety that people are feeling, their ability to have good conversations with their team, manage performance. So there's a whole host of, the skills and development that population need. And again, managing their own resilience, because a lot of the time during this business change, whilst businesses rely on their line managers to lead effectively, often they're impacted personally.
Yeah.
Sometimes by redundancy themselves. So, there's a huge amount of focus on making sure that the process is followed, but actually that focus on the people and the line managers looking after themselves in this process has a huge impact too. So, without wanting to sound repetitive, line manager capability, I think absolutely is a real focus that, can bring lots and lots of business benefits.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly when we talk to people about empower our employee relations, so empowering the managers to deal with employee relations, which brings so many benefits, we often come across organizations which their kind of feeling is our managers aren't ready for this yet. And from my perspective, I kind of think if your managers aren't ready for it yet, then it's going to be a really hard time ahead. And now is the time to really get them ready, is my opinion. So I'm just conscious of time a second. I'll just take one more, I think. So the question, I understand the benefit of outplacement services, but how can I get the buy-in of my senior team to spend on this when we are looking at cost reductions? Does anybody want to first stab at that before I have a go at it?
Do you want me to take this one? Absolutely. I hear this a lot. I think HR professionals really do see the benefits in providing outplacement services, particularly if they've used them during change programs in the past and they've seen the huge benefits that providing support can bring. But it can sometimes feel counterintuitive to spend money on outplacement services when costs are under review, and often headcount is under review as well. But there are significant business benefits and a real tangible ROI to the comparatively low spend that you can sometimes spend on outplacement services. It's not just the sorry to interrupt. It's not just the opportunity to support those who are leaving and treating them with dignity and respect. But also we said during the session, but it's the message that it sends to your remaining workforce. They'll be watching how you treat and support people to leave, because it's likely that they themselves may feel that they may be impacted by a future change. So they're very much looking at the support that's on offer, and that in itself can have a huge impact on their engagement and retention.
I think I totally agree, Claire. I think, as I said earlier, I think everybody understands that, if one organisation is making redundancies, for instance, I can't just go somewhere else where they won't be, because actually 4 out of 5 are likely to be making it. So what's actually important to me as somebody that's staying, when I look at it, is actually, if it did happen to me, unfortunately, how would I be treated in this organisation? And I think that can't be underestimated for the kind of morale and culture of the rest of the team.
Absolutely. It also promotes advocacy in those that are leaving, which in itself can ensure against reputational risk. People leaving, so, want to talk well of you. The fact that actually, again, it goes back to understanding the change that's happened, but actually my role was impacted. I did leave, but actually I was supported really well to leave. And that itself could have a positive impact on recruitment, because, if there's a recruitment challenge generally anyway, but if you want to recruit talent and you want to, the right people to join your business, again, that advocacy piece and people talking well of your organisation is absolutely critical. And we've already covered the legal and the litigation risks that outplacement can provide as well. So, lots and lots of business benefits as to why, you need to be thinking about outplacement support, and certainly whether you can afford not to provide it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Stefan, anything quickly? I'm just very conscious of time at the moment.
Yeah, so just to chip in my point of view, as an employment lawyer, supporting redundancy processes all the time definitely does bring offering outplacement definitely does bring tangible benefits to the process, in terms of making the employee feel like you really are thinking about what's going to be most valuable to them during what obviously is a very challenging process from the employee's point of view, but as Claire says, reducing appeals and ultimately reducing, challenges in terms of employment tribunal claims. So yeah, it definitely goes a long way to help during what obviously is a really difficult time for employees.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. I think we probably can't take any more questions. So thank you very much. There's so much more we could cover, and I'm sure you can hear how passionate we all feel about it. So we will be sure to follow up and cover more in the next webinar session. So that brings us to a close. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first in a series of webinars over the coming months, each covering different priorities that HR teams and business leaders are facing this year. We'll share invitations to the next session soon, but if you'd like to discuss any of the points raised in today's session, simply drop a note in the contact box below and we'll get right back to you. As we've touched on, all these changes will require updates and amendments to your policies, training, and your technology. The Powering People Group is all about simple solutions to people challenges, so we're expertly placed to help with ensuring you're implementing the right solutions to drive long-term success and support an agile and engaged workforce. We'd obviously be delighted to chat through the solutions we have to get you to where you want to be. So a massive thank you again to Stefan and Claire for your insights in the discussion today. I think we could have been going on till this afternoon. Thank you once again to everybody that's taken the time to join us. I hope you found it incredibly valuable, and we look forward to seeing you all on another Empowering People Group webinar in the very near future. Thank you.